Welcome to the Climate and Coordination RCAST, where every week we'll be discussing topics related to all things climate change and RChain's role in the solution. We will be discussing technologies that can adapt and coordinate massive amounts of data like never before, forming social architectures that grow collective intelligence, sharing and evaluating data planetarily, all while maintaining personal privacy and personal data ownership. A new decentralized economy is forming as we move from the third industrial revolution, digitization, to the fourth, decarbonization. By building a co-op, built on a correct by construction, concurrent, scalable solution, RChain is structured to build out the new technology that will be required for a flourishing regenerative planet. Please join us on this journey.
Okay, welcome to this week's Climate and Coordination RCAST. We have lots of topics to discuss today. We have a couple of guests with us that are going to also be chiming in, so this is going to be a great call. The first thing I wanted to discuss that I felt was noteworthy and also, potentially relevant to people in the community who want to know more about what's going on with climate is this first headline from The Guardian, which I just put in the chat. I love The Guardian. They always do great climate reporting. This is regarding the situation in Japan. And the headline says, "Million urged to seek shelter as floods and landslides hit Japan." And this is basically just explaining, as of last week, what the situation was with these floods. And I know that it's continuing on. And so maybe if anybody knows anything about what's going on in Japan, we can discuss the situation there. But the thing that struck me is that now we have these singular events that are now causing more than 1 million people to have to move away, either short term or, I guess in some cases, if their homes are destroyed long term. It says under the non-compulsory alert, about 1.4 million residents have been asked to leave their homes immediately. TV footage showed rescuers towing residents through submerged streets on a lifeboat in the city of Kurume in Fukuoka. I'm not sure if I'm saying that right, sorry. While a muddy stream began to flow in neighboring Saga Prefecture. So obviously this is a really dangerous situation. I just was really struck by 1 million people having to, or more than 1 million having to evacuate here. Also, it said, the reason why this risk is much higher because of climate is because apparently something that I might have known, but I'm glad that they cited it. It says a warmer atmosphere holds more water. So basically heavy rain is going to be increasing, not necessarily in the places where we need it most, like in California, but wet places are getting wetter and dry places are getting drier, which I think is something that everybody knows. It says here also unprecedented levels of heavy rain have been observed. It's highly likely that some kind of disaster has already occurred. This was, of course, last week on the 14th. The maximum alert is needed even in areas where risks of landslides and flooding are usually not so high. So that's also very concerning. Also, it mentions that there was a downpour last month that killed 23 people in a town called Atami. And also in 2018, they also dealt with this, with 200 people being killed in Western Japan, it says, during the annual rainy season. So I was just struck because I just feel that over 1 million people being put on, evacuation notice is really serious. And obviously, I hope the people of Japan are able to come back to their homes either soon or just as soon as possible. I just wanted to mention this because I don't feel that I haven't felt in a long time like there's really adequate coverage. Like I wish in the media, in the news media, there was like a section that sort of broke down what's going on with major climate events around the world today. And I feel that it's really not talked about. Like there's so much going on. Like this story was not even a major headline, and it's more than 1 million people, affecting more than 1 million people. And I just wish that the media could maybe take a moment and just give us, like a daily update or a weekly update on everything that's going on simultaneously around the world. Something I've said before is that I just don't feel that people are adequately connecting these events into one sort of larger story about the Earth. It seems like these events are reported on in kind of a short-term basis, where they're always seen as a surprise. They're always seen as a one-time thing. Oh no, yeah, it's flooding, horrible. Well, life will go back to normal. And then I just don't feel like people are really making the connection. So I'm going to pause there for anybody who wants to make any comments. But I just wanted to sort of bear witness to what's going on there.
Yeah. Well, you bring up a really good point. In just kind of, we're currently in this state as a global species where we have to figure out how to connect all the dots globally. We, like Daniel Schmachtenberger talks about, sense making. It's like, we're still moles, living without eyes. Like we're just, we need to see each other and work together. There's an article that just came out yesterday about headline, these parts of the UK could be underwater within 10 years due to climate change. So another article about flooding.
That's precisely why I can't go to Findhorn. I can't live there because it's going to be underwater.
Right. Yeah. 10 years.
Yeah. It's going to be getting close.
Yeah. It's 10 years. It's 2031, and it's going to be 2022 soon. It's really crazy that time is marching on like this. But and also, in one of my more recent blogs, I just mentioned that the time span between 1990 and 2020 is the same as 2020 to 2050. And so, like, when people say things about 2050, which is a number that gets tossed around a lot, I just want people to realize, like, that's like within the lifetime of most living people, like it's not some very far off. In fact, most young people are going to see the end of the century, So when people say end of the century, the quote end of the century, I just think it's important that people realize that will happen in your life. For, a lot of people, it will happen. So I just think it's, important to not see these dates as like far off, nebulous, fuzzy, whatever. It's very real,
Not oddly enough, I've been working earlier this week, on things I think quite directly related to that article, and the thing that you mentioned, Nora, about the mass movement of people in relation to these events, and that's a climate and coordination issue, I guess. How we coordinate the movement of those people and how we ensure that when they get to higher ground, shall we say, that we can pick them up the other end, and that the information that they need to provide to ensure their safety and their health can be provided in a decentralized way, where it doesn't matter where you're from or where you're going or where you came from. And that's been quite an interesting journey, because I think we've got a sketch for how we can do this in the UK really, really very rapidly. I mean, in a couple of months.
Yeah, I mean, I think that infrastructure is going to be super important. Oh, Greg, go ahead.
No, I was just saying, I agree that technically it is doable within a couple of months. I think what the challenges we'll have to overcome are largely jurisdictional, right?
Yeah.
Largely, it's going to be jurisdictional, and then it will also be cultural. The thing I'm most concerned about is, as things get tougher and tougher, is more build the wall kinds of attitudes. That where you get significant portions of populations not understanding that we're all connected, and that the calamities that are happening are all connected to the way we have been behaving together as a collective. And so the kind of circle the wagons mentality is going to be something that we have to overcome. And I think that ties back in with what Darryl was saying, which is this sort of this sense-making apparatus has to be a part of this whole shift that we're engaged in. So the decentralized tech is very important, right? And obviously, all of us have been spending many person hours bringing that about. But there also has to be this sense-making tech, and I do recommend Schmachtenberger's discussion. I also recommend Jamie Wheel's discussions in Recapture the Rapture. And I just got off a guitar craft course with my son, and that's also it's a remarkable sense-making apparatus. The esprit de corps and the sense of community and connection that happens 3.5 days, and the entire room of very different people from all walks of life and economic backgrounds and educational backgrounds and even musical interests. They palpably experience becoming a group, and these are the kinds of I hate to say the word, but I'll use it begrudgingly and with a sense of irony. This kind of technology, this sort of meaning-making technology and sense-making technology, is going to become more and more crucial as things start to get tighter and tighter.
Yeah, absolutely. Douglas, I would love to know if you have any thoughts about any of this.
Not really yet. I'm just kind of listening to the
Perfect.
whole thing.
Okay, good. Yeah, feel free to jump in at any time if you have anything you want to say.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just like to kind of mention when Greg was listing off influential thinkers, we are in the presence of one of the world's 10 most influential intellectuals, according to MIT. So
they must be right.
Yeah. So I don't know, Douglas, I feel as if maybe I need to introduce ourselves to you a little bit. My name's Darryl, and I'm on the board at RChain.
Hey.
I kind of chimed in on in an email that I think you read. And Steve Ross Talbot, he is a computer scientist who has been involved in varying degrees with the W3C. And, he has this storied history that I'm sure I wouldn't do justice to try to explain. And Greg Meredith, he's the president of RChain and founder of RChain,
right.
Also a influential computer scientist. And Nora Germain is a Renaissance person, including many things. She is an incredible violinist. And I myself also come from the music industry and found my way here from being involved with Scenario, which was the original project that preceded RChain. That was a open source social network.
Right. Well, hey all.
Hello, hello.
Darryl, maybe we should also introduce Doug, since maybe our audience doesn't know who Douglas is.
Okay. Well, to me, I'd be surprised if people didn't know, but Douglas Rushkoff is an influential thinker in all things with humans in the digital age. He's written some incredible books. And, I guess, is this your most recent book, Team Human?
Yeah, Team Human, which is really looking at how people can become a little bit more autonomous and conscious about how we move through this world, rather than kind of having people serving technology, figuring out ways for technology to serve the human project, kind of reminding us of the values that we might want to retrieve and bring forward into the digital age, rather than just accept the technologies as they're being configured for us by whoever happens to be configuring them.
Yeah. I was just thinking the other day about how so many things that influence our lives start from many times just one person. One person has an idea and implements it, and then it kind of carries us through to how we do things. It's crazy how that happens, but I guess that's how we work as humans.
Yeah, I mean, it's also, you got to figure out really whether that's who's doing the call and who's doing the response. In other words, that one person, are they really coming up with the thing, or are they just responding to a social need and readiness, at the right time? We're all systems thinkers here anyway. So, what I mean? That one person didn't originate it so much as they were part of a system. They were in the right place in the system to feel like, they get credit for it.
So true. I was just thinking when you were talking and thinking about Tim Berners-Lee and Elon Musk and, Satoshi Nakamoto, these people who kind of, there was already this thing happening. Something, some kind of shift was happening in our culture or whatever. And they were, like in the right place, the right time. And they just kind of managed to instigate and throw something out there.
It's funny though. I was just writing about that last night. I just put up a piece, a kind of a second piece in 2 weeks about that promise and peril of blockchain and all. And I was trying to, because people, when I'm critical about blockchain in public, the regular kind of Bitcoin, superficial level Bitcoin enthusiasts will say, "Oh, he doesn't understand what blockchain is." It's like, dude, I understand. I've been in crypto anarchist since '88. I understand where we're coming from. But I feel like what propelled blockchain forward really was Occupy. It feels like there was a readiness for circular economic systems. The white paper was out. And PGP and Onion was around since early '90s. So it's not like the technology wasn't there. It's that there was finally a kind of a social readiness for an alternative to Wall Street-based, centralized fiat, interest-based, growth required currency. There was this readiness, but then I feel like over the last 10 years, the kind of the wired long boom capitalists are steering the ship again. And just as the internet fell to, you would call it, surveillance capitalism, the blockchain seems to have fallen for the most part to all these millennials sitting at, the equivalent of Bloomberg terminals, trading their tokens or staking tokens to make money.
I think that's a social media perception. There's a lot more going on behind the scenes, right? And blockchain and cryptocurrency is not even the 1/10 of the surface area of blockchain.
Right.
Blockchain is much deeper than just cryptocurrency, but people haven't figured that out yet, and that's going to take a while, right? And it's like the relativity of information flow in social media, right? It's like certain things bend space and time, and that's. And so information flows quite unevenly through society.
Right. And then, but so many, when you meet a typical person and they say they're a crypto enthusiast, most of them are not talking about Rev and RChain and cooperatives and what we're talking about. They don't.
That's true. Yeah.
You're just not aware.
Yeah. But the thing is, as the screws get tighter and tighter, people are going to be looking for alternatives. Right. It's already happening when, it's like really silly stuff like NFTs, right? So people think it's great and they get this gold rush fever, and then they stop for a minute and they go, "Oh, wait a minute, what does this URL actually point to? Is that really going to be served up in perpetuity? Couldn't someone spoof that?" And then the whole ball begins to unravel, right? And the same is going to be true for a lot of the promises that don't lead in the direction of genuine decentralization. And the issue is can we ride the crest of the inevitable while not crashing on the rocks?
Right.
Well, I think it's like we are in this state right now where crypto is about money, because, you know, Bitcoin came up with this I guess, solution, this technology. And then, you know, Vitalik comes along and says, well, we can put a computer on the internet. We can, you know, it doesn't have to be about money. And so now we're at this period where none of us layer one blockchain platforms have fully delivered that yet. So we're still in this kind of purgatory stage. You look at NFTs as an example of a snapshot of where we currently are in the history of blockchain, because of the limitations. Because it's built on Ethereum, NFTs are flawed in many ways. You know, and you laid out the most important one, Greg. The actual thing isn't part of the NFT.
Yeah.
It's kind of crazy, but
Yeah.
you know, it's because Ethereum can't do that. And the fees are crazy. They're really expensive because Ethereum's fees are crazy and really expensive. So there's no way it's going to kind of scale to, you know, the greater population with Ethereum. So, but the fact that NFTs are so popular and taken off like crazy is a testament to what is about to come. And that's what I'm excited about.
You know, I think we'll know when we get there, when nobody bothers using the word crypto, right? That's when we're there, because we have to make the technology deliver real world benefits, like, you know, self-sovereign health passporting, something like that. And as they say, by your actions you shall be known. It certainly isn't in the world of trading and speculating in crypto. So we need to get away from that word crypto. But that only happens as dApps come online that deliver things that aren't really to do with crypto trading, but actually to do with some utility value. And so give manifestation to the notion of a utility token and what it's really for, because it's not for speculating.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
It doesn't stop speculators, but it will over time, as people realize what, you know, how that really sort of interacts and how the economy or marketplace that supports that could be made that much more transparent and that much fairer.
Yeah, it's coming.
I noticed, Douglas, that you had commented on a social documentary, I think, called The Social Dilemma.
Mm-hmm.
I was just reading your Wikipedia. And as I was reading that little bit about influence, it has Richard Barbrook. Does that mean that you've had interactions with Richard Barbrook?
Yeah, I mean, there weren't that many of us around.
Right, because the reason for picking Richard out is Richard has been involved in our earlier days looking at digital democracy.
Mm-hmm.
And we were, when Richard was working directly for the Labour Party in the UK, we were putting together a potential proof of concept with the budget. But then Brexit happened and it kind of lost momentum.
Wow.
But I helped to, you know, I was helping Richard last time I spoke to him, not that long ago, on a reissue of Labour Party's digital manifesto. And when you read the existing manifesto, you can actually map some of the functionality that they would like to have. You could map that to RChain. And I actually did the mapping. So I thought it was quite interesting that Richard is there amongst the writings about you on Wikipedia.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, he, you know, I think the most influential thing he did was one of his very first short books called The California Ideology, which really did, you know, it showed the way that kind of a certain kind of California libertarianism had gotten enmeshed with digital technological development. And he was trying to kind of parse them, you know, to show that, you know, we don't have to have that version of the future in order to be enthusiastic about, you know, distributed technologies.
Makes sense.
Yeah, I'm based in California, and I definitely identify with that sort of vibe here, sometimes creeping into things.
Yeah. I mean, there was a moment, in 92, 93, when the Mondo 2000 kind of vision of the net got replaced by the Wired magazine vision of the net. And a bunch of us complained about it in different ways. And partly it's we were, too in the thrall of John Barlow for, all the good that he did. He also, the Declaration of Independence of Cyberspace was really about kind of getting rid of government and everything that looked like government in favor of everything entrepreneurial that looked sort of like business. And we didn't quite realize that business wouldn't necessarily become different just because it was digitized. We thought the digital was like LSD, and it's like, oh, if you put Walmart on the internet, then they're going to turn nice.
Yeah. I totally remember that era. I remember buying both of those magazines, and there's also another one called something B2B, or it was like it was even more corporate than Wired was. But I remember when it was just Mondo, and then it was Mondo 2000, and that's when I first discovered you and read about you and people like Jaron Lanier, who I later met, and I actually did meet John Perry Barlow as well the same day at this event, and it's incredible the shift that occurred. Like, there was so much excitement about what the web could represent, and then it got taken over.
Yeah. But we're taking it back, apparently, we're doing it from the the foundational layer, building something that's going to be more biased. That's the thing. We didn't realize, that quite the way different technologies are biased towards different kinds of things. We didn't realize quite what would happen when two-way linking was replaced with one-way linking. We just didn't, I mean, a lot of us saw when the web came that, it's going to become like TV here. Everyone's serving content instead of, exchanging things. But, now with all that hindsight, that's what's exciting about, these, whatever we want to call fourth generation, tokens like Rev. It's like, okay, with all that knowledge, now we can build something that's biased toward the kinds of, behaviors that we want to see happen.
Yeah. It's interesting that you identify the Occupy movement as the kind of catalyst or potential catalyst for Bitcoin, considering that it seems like, so many would consider Satoshi more of a anarcho-capitalist or libertarian perspective.
Yeah, but then it started to feel like it was small. It was like the crypto movement was really small. Then Occupy came around, and it was like, here was a large population of people looking for something to replace centralized currency and corporate capitalism. And it did start to feel like Bitcoin and the blockchain movement was almost arising as tech support for, alternative visions of how do we optimize how do we optimize a currency for the velocity of money rather than the extraction of value? And it seemed like, people who were willing to actually reprogram money, and most of them were on the side of increasing prosperity for all, not extracting value from the world.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you think about the DNA of the people involved at that time, there's a core bit of DNA that marks them out, and it is this almost a trust in decentralization. Yeah. So whilst that was happening, there were other companies forming, cooperatives like Loomio, who were providing some of the platforms against which those movements were able to coordinate themselves. And so it's a natural extension to go from there to then look at Bitcoin and blockchain as a decentralizing technology. And then you start to see a shift of people into that direction, because the DNA is kind of identical. The aims and ambitions of people involved in all of that are the same for anyone that wants decentralization at its core. There is this worry and concern that I have from time to time, maybe it's my age, which is that you put a great deal of faith in the majority when you go down this road, and you're looking for cooperation as well. You have to put a lot of faith in the majority, that somehow there is something innate about humanity well, maybe that's what we call it, the humanity of humans,
Right.
it is sufficiently in the right direction for it to work out somehow within the bounds of what's acceptable for each and every one of us. And that's always problematic, because that then attaches itself to one of the biggest problems, which is how you do decentralized governance. And we have evidence that it works on a small scale but for a small thing with Extinction Rebellion. But finding, for instance, communities that really work in a decentralized fashion is much more challenging. I mean, you do have things like long established like Findhorn and the Eco Village network, but it's a looser cooperation than compared, for instance, cells that are attached themselves to Extinction Rebellion. But just a comment anyway. There you go.
No, I hear you. I'm late for a 12 o'clock I'm supposed to be at. I just wanted to pop in here, but I agree. That's why, I mean, I started studying anarcho-syndicalism as another sort of looser cooperative model where you've got, governance, a lot of governance locally and a whole lot less governance, non-locally, trying to coordinate cottage industries through God knows what, rather than I haven't yet seen it really work. I mean, the United States barely works at this point. It's just so hard. And it's also people start confusing their ideologies and beliefs with basic civics, which doesn't really require so much agreement about certain kinds of things, but we'll see.
Well, thanks so much for coming on the call, and please feel free to join us another time.
Yeah, thanks for inviting me. I'm just sort of learning my way around and what's going on and available. But it's great to meet you, and I feel very welcome. So thanks for that.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Yeah, fantastic meeting you, Douglas. Seriously.
Yeah, it's great to meet you.
Yeah.
No, I've been an admirer of this of rocks for a long time. I found out about them through I forgot his name now. This guy was doing something Pythia.
Jim Weisgarber?
Well, Jim originally, but then this Pythia guy. But Pythia I didn't like, but I liked the rocks underneath it. And I was like, oh, I get it. They're actually going to figure out proof of stake here in a way that's not just evil. And then it was like, oh, right, that is Jim's thing. And it was like, oh, this is but thanks for what you're doing. I think this is the only, I can't find another group doing this as congruently, from participants to technology and back again, and so.
Wow.
I think that's our USP. That is our USP.
Means a lot. Thank you.
Beautifully put.
Thank you.
All right. Well, more soon. I'll see you really soon. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Thanks.
All right. Nice to meet you. Thanks for what you're doing. Okay. Bye.
Bye.
Well, certainly will be nice to have those quotes from Douglas about the co-op. That's amazing.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's so cool. I mean, it's just exciting to kind of think about this kind of, people are discovering us finally. People are kind of getting it, and they're going, oh, this exists.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can feel the warmth of the reflected glow from RChain.
Well, maybe that would be a good segue. If you guys don't mind, this flew in during the course. Usually when something flies in during a guitar craft course, I sit up and pay attention. So if it's an okay moment, I'll go ahead and share this.
Please.
Yes, please do.
All right. The sun refuses to shine. My best work is behind me, he says. How can I ever rise like I did over Paris in July of 1963, or swell through the Serengeti plain with the same magnificence as I did before the hominids found their own fire? Don't be silly, darling, says the moon, while Venus just gives one of her sultry glances, and Mars plans to battle the coming cold. And Jupiter's laugh, normally so deep and reassuring, sounds strained and tinny, echoing all the other planets' misgivings. All except Gaia. She knows him. When he gets like this, she is blue with him to the depths of her oceans. She is depleted with him, withered on the vine. She is used up and abandoned, and invites him deep into her abandonment. Nowhere to go but the end of the poem, where she knows the secret abandon, the wild and rewilding, when it is just the two of them, the earth and sun, no one left to look in on them and the life that comes after.
Wow.
Well, thank you, Greg. That was beautiful.
Oh, thank you. It's a little bit of a, a take on, it might not be so bad if the earth and the sun don't have any of us looking in on them. It's just a way to begin to reconcile that outcome as well, that possible outcome as well.
Gaia and the sun will determine.
Indeed.
Well, that's wonderful. So I guess here's a question. I have a couple of more potential topics to discuss, but if there are other people who have other things they'd rather share, I just want to make sure there's an open space for that as well.
I've got this sketch for this health app for displaced people. Do you want to see it?
Hells yeah.
Absolutely.
Okay, I share my screen. Right, can you see that?
Yep.
Yes.
I can see it.
Yep.
Is it presenting?
Yep.
Yeah, it's looking good.
Right. So the story behind this is, Frank Arnold, Dr. Frank Arnold, as in the Arnold family. He needs a DAP. He needs a DAP, and he's got a couple of really interested parties, including the Helen Bamborough Foundation and I think Amnesty. And we may well put this out into the community and see if there's any takers. But it's a really quick app to build. So the problem that exists is that when you're a displaced person, so in this case, a refugee or asylum seeker, so you've probably gone through trauma. And if you're a displaced person because of climate change, you've certainly gone through trauma, right? And so what happens is, you've got a patient and a doctor, and the doctor uses certain systems. So in the UK, it's EMIS and System 1. And these systems have what are called APIs. And then what we want is the patient, so the person that's the subject with respect to the doctor, to have a smartphone app that connects to a health passport that lives on RChain. So it's no different really to the COVID passport, or indeed the basis of the RChain publishing NFT platform that's currently within a POC. So the idea is that the patient visits the doctor, they give but before they've done that, they've established their ID on chain. So they've gone through some KYC process so that they've got an identity on the chain, so that the application, the DAP, can attach to it and see information. So what their name is and possibly the authentication document that they use to authenticate, however they do that. And then there's a section in the data for their health data. So in this case, because it's NHS, there's a thing called a summary care record, which is quite small. So once the patient's established their ID, they go to the doctor and they register with the doctor. So they give their name, their details. They might show their authentication details from their health passport to the doctor, and the doctor then registers them in any one of two systems. So they enter the details, and then they get an NHS number, what's the patient number. So it's a number that's unique to all people that are registered with the NHS. And the doctor sends it to this displaced person. So they've now got that in email or airdropped, however they've got it. And they add it to their health passport. So they've recorded their NHS number. So, they won't forget it now. They don't have to write it on a piece of paper. It's just there now. And then they do the consultation. So the doctor enters details into the two systems about the patient having done a consultation, and then prints out a PDF record, which is called their summary care record, after the consultation, and sends it, email, airdrops it, whatever, to the displaced person. And then patients can save that data onto the chain so that they get the PDF data in. And then when they do subsequent consultations, rather than, and this is the problem it solves, rather than being asked by the doctor, a new doctor, because they've been displaced again, going through all of the rigmarole about what happened to you, what are your conditions, which is traumatic in and of itself. They don't need to do that. They just go to the doctor. They use their health passport. They can email and airdrop that summary care record to the doctor, who can then look them up on whatever systems they are on, which will authenticate or verify that they are the right person. They might update the record, send a PDF back, and that might get saved too, right? That's basically it. But it's so simple to do because we've got all the mechanisms with the RChain file browser to pretty much do this in record time. And I've got Helen Bamborough, Amnesty, and others, and including Frank, of course, wanting to trial it out as soon as we're able to, and they're trying to sort out funding for it.
That's fantastic.
So there you go. That is climate coordination in action.
Absolutely. This is just exactly what we wanted, right? Fantastic. And I'm looking at it and I'm thinking, does this mean I can go to the doctor and not have to fill my name, social security number, and address in 17 different times on 17 different forms?
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. So yeah, just, I mean, and we don't even have to parse the PDF. We just store it and we can encrypt it, put all the controls around it so that when you share it, you know, you share it to the right person and all of that stuff. We don't necessarily need any attestation because it's coming from source systems. So that is the attestation right there. So it's really, really, really tremendously simple, and shows how we can help in what is inevitable with climate change.
Yep. I think this is exactly the direction that we want to go. I mean, one of the things that I've been wanting to do is to set up RChain Health as separate from, say, RChain Publishing or Dazzle or the other kinds of content-based stuff, because there is different legislation and different compliance around health data. This is very different, for example, than the intellectual property law surrounding the release of a song, or the copyright law surrounding the release of a digital image of a fine art work. So I think it makes sense to have a vertical that is focused on the accumulation and dissemination of healthcare records.
Yeah, and I think it's really important when we talk about climate or any of these future, calamities. I think it's really important to look at them through a public health perspective, which I think is sort of lost on a lot of people. But climate is a public health issue. And so I think that health is going to be, obviously healthcare is one of the biggest issues in, a lot of nations that haven't figured out exactly how to deliver it efficiently. But I think it's going to become an even more hotly contested and fought for social service, because more and more people are going to require these services, and the borders and the sort of regulations that govern these different doctors and clinics, and if you're insured in this state but not in this city, and blah blah blah, that stuff is going to become difficult to sift through. So I think it's definitely focusing on health is going to be really, I think, important in the next decade and beyond, because we're going to rely on those services more than we did even before.
Absolutely, you're absolutely right. I mean, like, for example, I know that in the UK there are a lot of so-called alternative therapies that are covered by the NHS that would simply never be covered in the US. And if there are people who are immigrating from the UK to the US to escape flooding in northern England, that's going to become an issue. and vice versa. So there's all kinds of situations where we need to start looking at what it means to have these kinds of cross jurisdictional situations, and how we're going to handle them, because we're all going to be in the shit, every last one of us. And we're going to have to look at what it means. Cross jurisdictional healthcare is going to become a real thing.
Yeah, and holy crap, what a puzzle to solve.
Oh yeah.
I'm just picturing all the Canadians here who are benefiting from the legalization of cannabis, and if we were climate migrants trying to head to the south, being stopped because we have some CBD flower on us is like such an absurd idea. But it's just multiply that by 10,000 and 10 million. It's just like, how are the laws going to be able to change fast enough to kind of accommodate all of these needs from climate migration? But, I think, Steve, you're on the right track with just focus on one country first and, get that figured out and branch out from there.
Yeah, I mean, once it's established, you've got very simple patterns with the use of APIs, calling the RFM stuff, the RChain file browser. Or the RChain file manager, I should call it, hence the M. But yeah, I mean, it's once you've got that pattern established, it's easy then to franchise that out and get other people to build adapters that allow them to do it in different geographies.
Yeah.
So we'll see what happens.
Well, bravo.
Thank you. I haven't heard back from Frank yet, but I'm sure I will be.
So Nora, we've got about 7 minutes. Do you have another topic that you want to throw out?
Well, sure. There's a couple things that I thought might be interesting, but just this one, I think, is just sort of tying into what we've been talking about. And Greg, I thought you might appreciate this as well. Unfortunately, the substance of this article really is inadequately addressing what it's talking about, but I feel that it's a step forward, that this is a headline anyway. And this is from CNBC, and it says climate change will disrupt supply chains more than COVID. Here's how businesses can prepare. It sort of paints a little rosy picture of, get to know your suppliers. Everything will be fine. It's only the sushi rice, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff. And I don't think it really adequately explains the level to which supply chains can and probably will suffer. But I do feel happy that an outlet like CNBC, which is very sort of capitalist business oriented, is at least addressing, they're starting to write articles, or people who work for them are starting to write articles that are at least mentioning these things that we talk about very often on this call. And, they talk about innovation and creativity, and get to know what your suppliers are doing to mitigate climate change. And, it's all very rosy. I wish that the article could be a little bit more serious about, securing things like water and, arable land and, things like that. But I do feel that it's important that people are at the very least, they're thinking about what's going to happen with their supply chains in the future. And I know we've been talking about that a lot lately. I guess just the ending that they say is, we don't have any time to waste to cut our emissions, and there's going to be nowhere to hide if we let warming proceed at the rate it's going right now. Which, again, I mean, it's a nice sentiment, but it's like we've already cooked ourselves. Like the oven is on, and it's, like we're inside waiting to see just how much we're going to cook. Like that's basically what's happening. And of course, they mention Apple, which is pledged to cut emissions from its supply chain to net zero by 2030. We know that net zero is basically an accounting manipulation So net zero is really not acceptable. We need to get to absolute zero or less than zero, which basically means you never emitted those emissions in the first place. But I am grateful that CNBC is talking about this. So,
you know what, we'll know when this is being taken seriously, when news programs habitually put up statistics about climate change in the same way they did about COVID. That's what I want to see on my news.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. Maybe we should start doing that on the podcast. We'll just have a little ticker running across the bottom with the climate change statistics.
Sure. I mean, I think like week to week, that stuff is going to be tricky to compile, but I'm sure there are some things that we could share, or we could even just, run through them, talk about them every week as a little bulletin.
Yeah, it's an interesting.
Yeah, the world is changing,
Yeah, we should definitely take a look at that. Just let's be the change we want to see.
Yeah, absolutely.
Let's think about storing them on the chain as well, or at least links to them.
That's an interesting idea as well. Yeah, for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can do an app that connects to the wallet that has all that in, and then just have it read back continuously. It's an idea. Might be a cool university project.
Absolutely. There you go. Now we're talking. And on that note, maybe it is time to ring us out, because I think we got 2.5 minutes before the staff meeting.
Yeah.
Right. Well, thank you all for joining us. Thanks to Douglas Rushkoff, for joining us. That was so cool to get to speak with him, and hopefully he'll join us again in the future. And next week, we're going to have the Arnold family with us. I'm not sure if it's just one member or multiple members, but we're going to have a great conversation next week, which is going to be fantastic. I'm really looking forward to that. So thank you all. Make sure you're subscribed to RChain on YouTube and following on Twitter, and we will see you on the next one.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you.
Ciao, ciao.